stopped the last class was architecting on AWS. So I was showing you that, I told you that whenever they give you any task to do, before you start the task, you need to architect the end product so that you know what you are expected at the end of the project. So yesterday we trying to architect the demo that we want to do. So, but because of time, I have to rush it. So I need to quickly revise that today. So when you are doing when you are architecting your project, normally you don't have to start from the AWS cloud, but I just purposely put this there because at times you will see it in other people's projects too. So this is the AWS platform. This box is representing the AWS platform. So before you deploy any resources in the cloud, you need to identify which region are you deploying that resources. So the next thing for us to select is the region, because there are some resources or some services that they are region specific. They call them regional products, and there are some that they are global. So if you do not specify that region and you just deploy anywhere you see, then you might find yourself deploying in resources in a region that your company do not want. So the first thing you need to do once you identify the AWS account, which is normal, then you specify the region that you want to deploy resources to. And also when you are gathering requirements for a project, you have to also ask the client what region would they want the resources, because there are some resources or some services that they are not available in some region. So you have to be mindful of the region where you deploy your resources. This other thing that you will need to select is the availability zone. You need to identify the availability zone where you want to deploy the resources. Though at the availability zone, whichever availability zone that you select does not really matter, but the main thing is the region. So if you are deploying resources in multiple availability zones, maybe the project has to is a critical mission project which must not go down, or that means it must be available all the time. Then you also want to pay attention to the availability zone so that you do not deploy, so that you will not deploy all your resources in one single availability zone. You want to spread it across multiple availability zones. Should in case if one availability zone go down, then the other one will be responding to traffic to your application. Then after that, we have our instance, which we want to deploy. Then followed by the we have security group. The security group for this instance, we call this host security group. This is the same thing as firewall. If you have a firewall on your system, this is the symbol that we use to represent firewall on the AWS. There are multiple firewalls on the AWS account, or on AWS, there's multiple firewall services, but the host firewall is called security group. So that is why we have this shape that is why we have this shape that is surrounding the this shape that surrounds the instance. Guys, give me 1 second. Somebody is trying to attend, but they can't. Let me see. All right. I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can, but it's actually moved to one side. I don't know if it can be centered so we can see everything. It's just on one side.
On one side.
That's the architect itself.
So that's the problem of, let me see. It's because I'm doing presentation. Assuming I'm just sharing the screen directly, you will.
It's fine, we can see it. You only have security group and it's on right now. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be monitoring it. I think this is actually centered because I'm seeing it too, just that it moved towards the right a lot. And I think that is on purpose because I still have other things that need to come to the left. All right. So you can see the users as you're trying to access the file. I mean, as you're trying to access the server needs to be publicly facing, meaning that when they say a server is publicly facing, it means that a public IP address is attached to that instance so that the people on the internet can actually access that instance. So that is why you are seeing this user icon and the internet talking to the instance. So all this is just a very basic way of drawing architectural diagram. And when we get to solution architects, you're going to be learning more about how to design architectural diagram. So any user that wants to access your instance, majorly the administrator that need to administer the system, maybe install patching or download anything, any software on the server, they need credentials so that they can be able to access the server. So to access to input this credential, AWS automatically block username and password. So that is why if you spin up a server today, you cannot access that server with username and password. So the only means of accessing this the server is to use the SSH key. We call it key pair. So there are two keys. When you create a key, there are two keys that will be generated. The first one is called the public key, while the second one is called the private key. The private key will be automatically downloaded on your system. You have to keep the private key private, while anybody can have the public key. So the public key will be stored on the instance. So anytime that you want to sign in, you have to specify the private key. And when you are connecting, AWS will first check whether the private key that you are bringing or that you are sending to them correspond with the public key that is on the host that you want to connect to. If both of them correspond, then they will allow you entry so that you can administer the instance. Otherwise, they will block your access. Somebody is asking what is the instance. Instance is another name for server on the cloud. So AWS, all the cloud provider, they have different names that they call their own services and resources. So you will call it server on-prem. If you have a server, you call it server, but AWS call their own instance, which is called Amazon EC2 instance. All right. So that is architecting on-prem. I mean, architectural diagram. So now let's go to the console and actually deploy this architectural diagram. So now I'm heading to the console. For those of you that have not opened your AWS account, please do so because we are going to be starting to use it. So I'm going to connect to my AWS account. And one thing that I want to say is that if you already have AWS account before, please try to make sure that you maintain it very well because these days it's very hard for those that already have an AWS account before to open a new one. I don't know what the way AWS is detecting it, but if you already have an account before and you spend some money on it, you don't pay it, and you're trying to open a new one, they will be denying access to the new account. So now, if you want to create if you want to create an EC2, the first thing you need to do is to locate that EC2 services. There are a lot of services on AWS. So the way you search for a particular service is to go to the search button and search for that service. You can use the name of the service to search, or you can use a keyword. For instance, let's say I want to search for a service and I don't really know the name, but I know that it has something called pipeline. Then I can just type pipeline in it. Then it's going to bring out all those services that has pipeline. So I can then select the one I want. But another means is just to click this service and try to search through here. Then you pick the service that you want to deploy. So because I already bookmark my service, so I'm just going to come here and click it. So now this is the AWS page. AWS EC2, Amazon EC2 page. EC2 is a service, is a compute service on AWS. So this is the page for the EC2. So everything I want to be doing I will find them on this page. So the first thing is, when you are deploying a new resources like this, the first thing that you want to do is to gather requirements. I'm going to open a notepad. Is to gather requirements. And you need to, yesterday we discussed features of EC2, like those services, the items that you need if you want to deploy your EC2. The first thing we say that we need, we talk about AMI, Amazon Machine Image, which is also referred to as operating system. Which is a pre-configured operating system. Then we talk about the instance type. We talk about key pair. We talk about who can assist me with other things that we discussed yesterday on EC2, those that you need.
Instant volume.
Yeah, talk about volume, the instance volume. So all these things, what do you call this? IPO, right? I think there is other thing that we talked about, which I'm not remembering now. If I look at here, I should be able to see it. Also, we need to specify which region do you want to deploy the resources and which availability zone. So all these things, before you come to AWS and start deploying the resources, you need to already find out what is going to be their value, like the AMI, which AMI do they want you to use? What is the instance type that they want you to use? What is the key pair? Are they going to give you the key, or they want you to generate it? What is the volume size? Do they want to use 8 gig, 12 gig, 14 gig, and things like that? Then which region do they want to deploy in? So these are all the parameters that you must first get before you come here and start deploying resources. So because we don't have all these parameters now, that is fine, but we're going to be getting them as we go. But in real life, this is what you need to get first before you go to the console and start deploying resources. So the first thing we want to do, because we want to create a new server, which is called launch a new server. Some people will say you want to launch a new server. Some people will say you want to spin up a new server. Both of them are the same thing. So I'm going to click on launch. Then the first thing is for us to input our server name, which is called a tag name. So I'm just going to give it a name, but in real life, it's always good to follow the company naming convention. So they have a specific name, the specific way of naming their application. Some people will use the name of the company, maybe Coca-Cola. They may say, maybe this is Coca-Cola web server. Anything. Some people will just use keywords, which they may say something like Roma Cloud, Roma AWS Cloud 1, something like that. They use keyword, but it just depends. So you have to make sure that you are using the same naming convention with your company. But for now, I'm just going to call it my first web server. So that is the name. You can see this is it for the name tag. Then the next one is the application and operating system image, which is called the Amazon machine image. So this is when you now specify which operating system OS do you want to use for this server. Remember, in our second class, we talked about different kind of operating system. We talked about the Windows operating system. We talk about the Linux operating system. We talk about Mac operating system. So here is when you will pick the operating system that you want. So the AWS also have their own operating system. So we're going to be using this, but this is Mac. You can also use Mac. But if you are using Mac here, it's kind of expensive. So I don't think that they have the free version of it. So I will say, don't go to this route because you have to pay for it. I don't think they have the free version. And it can only be deployed on a physical server. You remember yesterday when we were talking about pricing, EC2 pricing, when we talk about the dedicated host and dedicated instances, those are what you can use for the Mac OS. You can't use any other one. So for this, I'm just going to stick with the one that AWS have, which they have some free version of it. Then once you pick the operating system that you want to use, then there are different versions of operating system. So you can pick the current one, or when you go up like this, default one, then you can pick any one that you want. In fact, let me change this one to Windows Server. So let's spin up a Windows Server. So this is Windows Server. And if you click here, you will see different versions of Windows Server. You will see Windows 22, Windows 19, and Windows 2016 rather. So I'll be going with the Windows 2016 basic, 2009 basic. So that means I've selected my operating system. So I want to use Windows operating system. Then the instance type, we discussed this yesterday. There are different families or different category of instance type. Who can give me one category of instance type? Just one. Just one.
General purpose.
Yeah, we have general purpose, we have compute optimized, we have storage optimized, we have accelerator, compute. Yeah, a lot of them, but we discussed them yesterday. If you are not in the class yesterday, you can go and watch those videos. So I'm going to be picking this T2 micro is family of general purpose. So I'm going to pick that, and you can see it's also a free tier. It's free tier eligibility. Eligible. So meaning that if you use this, they are not going to charge you for it. But if you don't want to use that and you have a lot of money to spend, just scroll down, click on the drop down arrow here, and when you scroll down, you will see the price of those servers And like I said yesterday, that you can see what actually makes up an instance type is the CPU, the number of CPU that it has, the memory capacity, and the network capacity as well. So if you need an instance type that is very, very strong, maybe you want to run a compute optimized, that means you are going to be needing a lot of CPU. So you can see this one has 96 CPU. Your system only has one CPU. So this one that has 96, you can see is going to be extremely fast. But if you go and pick this, which also has 192 gigabytes of memory, your system has maximum of 16. So you can see the speed, the quantity, the quality of this server compared to your own system. But if you pick this, just know that you are paying $3.67 per hour for using that. So don't make that mistake and go and change it. Just stick with the free version or the free tier, which is, I'm going to use T2 Micro. And you can see, though it's still expensive at 1 cent, but it's free. So I'm going to stick with that. Then the next one is the key pair. You have to select the key pair. If you already have a key before, you can just select that key, which I already have one. But if you do not have any key before, or you are not sure where the private key, because this key is a key pair, 2 keys, as I told you earlier. One is public and the other one is private. The public will be on the system, while the private will be on your own system. The public will be on the AWS server. So if you don't know where this private is, then it's as good as useless. So you just need to delete it. But make sure that if you have already used this with a system before, make sure that you keep it very well, because if you throw it away, then the process of you cannot get it back, and the process of actually being able to log in onto that system, which you use this key for, is going to be complex. So it's always good when you use a key, when you are creating a system, make sure you keep the key very well. So I'm not going to use this key. I'm going to create a new one. And if you don't want to use a key, just select proceed without a key. So that is possible too. But if you create a system that does not have a key, then you won't be able to connect to that system from your own laptop, except you do some things which we are not going to be discussing in this cloud practitioner training. So I'm going to create a new key called create a new key. So it's going to give me a new pop-up box. Please, if you are not talking to the class, can you mute yourself? So if you click on create a new key, it's going to open a new pop-up box. And I expect some people to be following me as I'm doing it, because that's why I'm kind of a little bit slow, so that you can do what I'm doing. So the key pair name, you can give it any name you want, but still naming convention or best practice, try to name it, give it a name that you will easily know, or that it will easily be identified with the server that you want to use the key for. So I'm going to name this one my first web server key. So for now, for this training, don't bother about this KP and this. Just select the first one. When we get to solution architect, we might be discussing about every other one, but just select the first one. Then just click on create. Now you can see that it downloaded it on my system. The one that I downloaded on my system is the private key, and this is the key here. You can see how gibberish it is. Don't bother, don't think that is a secret. I'm going to delete it after the class. So look at how it is. It's a lot of key. But guess what? What you are seeing here is just a test, like something like, let me open another notepad. Don't go and write here, because I know what I'm doing. That's why I just want to write here. All this you are seeing here, this is what they call encrypted text. So what you are seeing is just this, but because it has been encrypted, and that is why you are seeing this long text that has no meaning. But at the end, if you decrypt this back, if you change it back to normal text, you might just see something like this, which is very few. And we're going to see that very soon. So I'm not going to save my changes because it's going to corrupt that key. So now you can see, automatically see now that it has saved the key here. So by the time we spin up that system finish, this public key is going to be stored on the system, which is on the server. Then the private key is on my own system. So anytime I want to connect to that server, I have to present the private key that is on my own server. So that is that. Then the next thing I want to do is to select my network settings, is to set my network. But there is something I told you guys to be doing, which I do not even do here. Now, I told you that the first thing you need to do is what? Who can remind us? The first thing you're supposed to do is what? Before you start spinning, before you start creating any services. I think nobody is in the class.
No, you need to
Maybe an IP.
IP? No.
Like you need to, I forgot what you call it, but you need to ask for permission though before they accept that.
Permission? No. No. Okay, I'll
Like,
start
it's like our authorization.
No. I told you
So
about
pick up
region.
the region where you're trying to create the instance.
Yeah, I told you about the region. Now look at what happened now. I have issue with this my region, which because the current region I'm in is North Virginia. And my own North Virginia has issue because I have messed up with it. So I cannot deploy resources here. If I have checked the region before I started, I wouldn't have deployed that resources here. So that is one of the issues that you're going to encounter. If you don't check the region, then you will end up deploying resources in a very wrong region. So if you want to check the region, just click here. The one that is colored different is the current region that you are in. So I don't want to use this region because I've messed up with it. So I need to change it and I need to do everything again. But before that, let me show you what I actually do with this. Although it won't affect you. If you have been following me, you can continue. But if I try to do the network settings, I have deleted some things here, which is not going to affect your own system or your own AWS account. But here now, if I click on the edit, now that I've edited these network settings, it has showed that, okay, this is my default VPC. And this default VPC, if I don't want to use it, don't worry about VPC yet. We're going to do it in the next module, which is networking. So if I don't want to use this, I can click on this arrow and change it to anyone that I want. So now I have to change it to this, because for me, if I use that default, it's going to mess up my settings. But for you, do not change it. Especially if you have a fresh AWS account, don't change it. So the reason why I'm changing it is because, for instance, look at it now. When I click on this default, if I go to the next one, subnet, you see it's showing me that there is no subnet there because I deleted all those subnets. And because there is no subnet, I can't use that. I can't use that VPC. So that is why I need to change it to the one that has subnet. Like this two now, it has subnet, so I can use this. So for you, if you do not have any other VPC in your account, don't change it. You are good with default, because whatever we are doing, we are not passing default settings. So just leave it on default. Then after that, if I have changed the region, I would have used default. in the other region because I do not mess up with that. But this one, I mess up with it. And I don't mess up with it. I was just doing some settings, which I know what I'm doing. So here, the subnet, for you, select the default. Once you select the default, your own default, you can pick any subnet you want. I have only 2 in my own subnet, but you will be having 6 if you choose default. And if you are also in North Virginia, you're going to be having 6. But here, I only have 2. Don't bother about this. What is subnet? What is VPC? We're going to discuss it. And when we're going to discuss this, you will see that this is actually something that we have already discussed when we are talking about on-prem data center. But don't bother about that. Maybe in our next class, we're going to get there. So for the auto assign public IP, click on enabled. That tells you that, do you want the server to have a public IP address like this one, public IP address. So if your system do not have, if your server do not have a public IP address, then these people on the internet will not be able to connect to it. So that is why you need to make sure you have auto assign public IP address, set it to enabled. Then the security group. If you go back to our architectural diagram, remember the security group. This is what we need to configure next. So to configure that security group, you can pick a existing security group if you already have one. If you open your AWS account, AWS automatically creates one for you, and it's called default. So you can use that. But if you don't want to use the default, you can create your own. So I'm going to click here to create a new one. When I'm creating a new one, I need to give my security group, I need to give it a name, which is my firewall. I need to give it a name. So I'm going to call it my first web server security group. Then this one is optional, but I've just copied the same thing and paste it here. But don't worry, when we get to solution architect, I'll be telling you more about that. So the next one you're going to see after the description is called inbound security rules. Your firewall is just like a security man that you have already given him instruction that, hey, if anybody called Victoria is coming to look for me, tell her I'm not at home. Then your security man has that instruction. So anybody that comes in to look for you is going to tell them you are, it depends on the instruction. It's not going to tell them you are not at home. But once Victoria comes, the next thing you will say, no, it's not at home, because they already gave you that instruction. But another instruction might be, hey, anybody that comes to look for me, tell them I'm not at home. But when Victoria comes, let her come in. So there are 2 different instructions there. So anybody that comes, the security person will say it's not at home, it's not at home. But immediately when Victoria comes, you are suddenly at home. So that is an instruction that is called a rule, security groups rule. So it depends on where the traffic is coming from. Then we might allow the traffic to come in, or we might deny it. Allow it or deny it. So, but for now, because we only want to be able to administer our server, then we need to open a port called SSH so that we can access the server. If you don't know what an SSH is, don't bother about it for now, but you should go and watch some YouTube video. I'm still going to talk about it later, but if you can't wait, you can go and learn online what an SSH is, but don't bother about that now. Just select inbound rule and the type, pick SSH. Then the source, leave it everywhere, anywhere. Then that is all you need to do for now. If you are using the default, VPC, the one that we discussed up here, then you can go with the default security group. Otherwise, you can also create your own. I will suggest you create your own just to learn how to create it. So once you create your own security group, the next thing is to click on Advanced Networking Settings. When you scroll down on Advanced Networking Settings, you will see a lot of things there. Do not touch it, just leave it the way it is, then go down. So I'm just going to close it back. Don't touch it, just leave that the way it is. You are not there yet. I'm going to go down, then configure storage. This is the hard drive of your server. So that is what you want to configure here. Everything we are configuring here, if you have a server on-prem, they are those things that comes with your server. But now, because it's not on-prem, we need to fill a form. What we are just doing here, we are filling a form of how we want AWS to prepare our own server that is going to be in their cloud. So at the end of the day, by the time we finish this form and submit it, this is what AWS will use to spin up an instance for us. Whatever we put here is what they will use to spin up an instance for us. So now, the next thing to do is to tell AWS what is the size of the storage that will be on that will be attached to that instance. So the minimum here is 30 gigabytes. If I want, I can change this to 100 gigabytes. But mind you, if you use more than what AWS allocated as free, then they are going to charge you for it. So for that, I'm going to leave it at 30. And the instance, the EBS name, just leave it as it is, GP2. When we get to solution architects, we're going to be reading more about this. And even, I think when we get to the storage on the cloud, we're going to be talking more about this. So after this, then you need to scroll down. For now, don't do anything here. Just leave it the way it is. For the advanced settings, leave it the way it is. Then that is the head. Leave everything the way it is. Then click on launch. So this will create a server on the cloud for you, just as if you have a server on-prem. But now we're having a virtual server instead of physical server. So this can be related to you having a virtual laptop where you can still do your regular task that you do on your physical laptop, but now we are doing it on a virtual laptop. So that is just the concept of virtual server. So now I'm going to wait for it for some time for it to, oh wait, I'm having two. Do I deploy two? I'm going to click on this instance to see the instance that is launching. Oh, I might have mistakenly pressed 2 because now it's deploying 2. So I'm supposed to change it to 1 under the summary. Maybe I mistakenly pressed 2, so it's creating 2, but there's no problem with that. I'm going to send out a document which will show you a step-by-step guide. I created it yesterday. Let me see. Can't find it here. Okay, I've seen it. This is it. I created this yesterday, a step-by-step guide on launching your first EC2. So you can see the first thing is to select your region. Then second steps, you can also search. I mean, this first step is, you can see here, I put this one as, come on, why is it hanging? Something is loading. You can see I put this one as step 0 because it is a must for you to do, irrespective of whatever service that you want to create. So this is first thing you need to check. Make sure you check the region where you want to deploy the resources. Then after that, you select these resources that you want to create. Then you can either select it here or you can search for it. When you search for it, you click on launch. Then you give it your name. Once you give it a name, you select your operating system. After that, you select the instance type. You make your key. Then you set the networking. You click the editing on the networking. Then you create your own SSH key. I mean, your security group. So I will send out this so that if you don't get what we are doing here, you can still follow this. So if I scroll down to the end, here it's supposed to be 1 at the summary, but I think I have 2 there. That is why it's spin up 2 instances. If you have 3, if you have 4, if you have 5, it's going to spin up whatever number you have here. So this is why it's spin up 2. I think I mistakenly typed 2 here, and that's why it's spinning up 2 resources for me. So I'm going to send, I mean, when I want to upload the video for this particular day, for today's video, I'll also attach this PDF there. So the instance is running. You're going to check initializing. You have to wait for this to show 2 of 2 sources, meaning that, 2 of 2 check to make sure that it's fully running before you do anything on it. So my suggestion now, okay, it's actually passed. I wanted for us to go on break so that by the time we come back, it's done. But since it's already, you can see 2 of 2. Please mute yourself if you are not talking to the class.
Yeah, can I quickly ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Islamia. Yeah, when you were talking about the SSH, does that apply to the adding ports to the instance you're creating?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So here now, before you start accessing this server, always make sure that the instance state is on running. You can see as it is running before you can access it. And also make sure that this check is 2 of 2. When we get to solution architect, I'm going to be explaining deeper what this 2 of 2 means. But for now, you don't need it. So now we have a server that is running. I'm just going to be using one of them. So I can delete the other one I don't want to use. So the second one, for me to delete it, we call it terminate. So I'm just going to go to instance state. Then I'm going to terminate the instance because I don't need it. So you can see how good cloud is. If I mistakenly bought 2 servers, 2 physical servers, can I just delete it like that? No, I have to create documents. I have to start the returning process and things like that. But yeah, I don't need it. I just terminate it and they don't charge me for it. Then I'm only going to be using what I need. So now for me to connect to this server, the first thing I need to do is to open it. So I need to get some information here, but because this is a Windows server, I don't need to open my terminal to be able to connect to this. I can just go to this click button. You see this, this connect button, click on it. This is how I want to connect to the server. And now I'm going to go to this RDP. RDP. So this RDP now, you can see it say get password. Get password. So I'm going to click on this for me to get the password. Remember, we don't use password. We use what? Private key. So I need to upload my private key here. The private key that I downloaded, I need to upload it. So now I've uploaded the private key. I'm now telling it to decrypt it. So once it decrypts it, it's going to give me just a small password. You can see this is now the password. But initially, what we saw was one gibberish long text, but it's because it was encrypted. So now that we've decrypted it, and we have just a very simple, straightforward password. So I'm going to open another notepad. I'm going to put some information here. So this is my password. And I need a username. So this is my username, admin. So together with this username and password, I can connect to this server that I just created. I can connect to it anywhere. But there is one thing that we're supposed to do that we didn't do. And I understand it because this is just a basic class, and I don't want to start talking in technical terms. I don't want to scare anybody away. But if you read here very well, it's telling us something. It says you may not be able to connect to this instance as port 3389 may need to be open in order to be accessible. The current associated security group does not have port 3389. So what does this mean? When you have a server, let me see my presentation. I want to see one of my servers that we were using yesterday. Anyway, I'm going to just use anyone. Okay, just look at this server. Don't bother about this diagram first, but just look at this server. When you see this server here, and this person here wants to connect to this server, or this laptop wants to connect to this server, on this server, there are multiple doors, different doors. The server is just like a house, which has a lot of doors. So it depends on which door do you want to come in through. If you want to come in through the front door, if I do not open that door, can you come in? Questions to the class.
Nope.
If you are coming to my house, hello?
No.
Fine. So if I ask you to come in through the back door and I didn't open that door, can you still come in? No. So the same way with this server, this laptop that is connecting to this server is coming in through a particular door. And if that door is not open, then that connection cannot be successful. So
that's when you need the private key, right?
No, that's not private key. So if that door is not open, then this cannot connect. So on your system, you have a lot of applications that are running. And some of them, even on your phone, if you open an application on your phone, maybe Instagram application, that Instagram is just an instance of a server or an application that is stored on a server. On that server, when you open your Instagram, it's going to, your Instagram app will need to make a connection to the main server where all those contents are stored. If that main server do not open the particular door that your own instance, your own Instagram application is coming from, it will not, the connection will not successful. So this server here now, this laptop, before it can talk to this server, a particular door must be opened. So which door now depends on where this laptop is trying to connect from or where it is coming from. And this door that I'm talking about, we call them ports. So on your system or on your laptop or on the server, there are a lot of different doors called ports. So it depends on how somebody is trying to connect to that system that will make it be successful or not. Depends on if the door or the port is opened. If you are trying to connect from your laptop, maybe you open a browser on your laptop and you go to google.com. That kind of connection, remember yesterday I said that is a request and a response. When you press google.com and you press enter, you are sending a request to Google server. Then Google server needs to respond back. Because you open a browser and press google.com and press enter, that is like a means of transportation that traffic is taken to the Google server. And that means of transportation is called HTTP. And that is why when you open any browser and you look at the connection, you will see the first, look at this here now, you will see HTTP. Because I'm trying to connect to AWS web server, this server, this page that you are seeing is actually a web server. So because I'm trying to connect to AWS application over the browser, that is why it say, okay, because we want to connect over the browser, I'm going to use this HTTP as my means of transportation. So on that server now, let's say, let's say this is the laptop that I'm opening the AWS account on. Now I press aws.com here. Before it opens that page, it's going to use HTTP to send that request to this server. So on this server, it must an HTTP port must be open, which means a HTTP door must be open, so that any connection or any traffic or any incoming request that is coming from HTTP or through HTTP will be able to come in. But if the server do not open the door to HTTP, then that connection will not be able to come in. So what does that mean now? The server that we created, we have a firewall, and the firewall do not open HTTP. The only thing it opens is SSH. So the only thing that I can use that for is if I open my VS Code. Remember, we talk about this VS Code or terminal. Let me use terminal this time around, CMD. If I open my terminal and I press, SSH, then put the username and the IP address, then if I now make any enter here or making any request, that means I'm trying to connect to that server, not through a browser, but through a terminal. So this is another means of transportation. And on our security group, this is the only door that we opened. Remember when we are creating our security group, we specify SSH. So what we are doing then was that, hey, we want to come in through SSH, through a terminal. But now we are saying we are not coming in through terminal again. because we are using Windows laptop or Windows server. It's not that you cannot come in through terminal with Windows server, but this approach that we followed will not work for us if we are going to connect through SSH. So the only thing that we need to do now is to download this remote desktop file. When you download this remote desktop file, now what we are saying now is that we are not connecting through SSH again. We want to connect through remote desktop, and this need a different port. Instead of port 22, if you are connecting through the remote desktop, you are coming through port 3389. So now we need to go back to our security group and open this port. Otherwise, we will not be able to connect. Yes, I know that is a very long explanation and a little bit technical, but gradually, if you don't understand it, just go back, rewatch the video, try to read article about it on ports and protocols, but I'm still going to discuss on networking later in the class. So the first thing I need to do now, I need to go back to the instance. Then I need to go to my security group. So I need to open this instance. Then go to the security. This is where we are going to get the security group that we use. You can see this is the security group. When you click on that security group to open it, you are going to see the ports that we opened. You can see currently we only open inbound. What this means is that, okay, any traffic that is coming from ports, any traffic that is coming from SSH use port 22. That's okay, because they are using port 22 as a result of SSH, we are going to open port 22 down for them. Because they are coming as a result of, because they are coming through SSH, we are going to open port 22 for them. But now that we don't want to come in through SSH, we want to come in through RDC, which RDP, then there is no other port. So we will not be able to connect. So before I modify this, let's complete this download. We say connect. It's going to download RDP on my system. If you already have RDP on your system, you don't need to re-download it. All you just need to do, you can see, you say I already have before, I can't connect. So all you just need to do, go to RDP like this, search for RDP, then you're going to see remote desktop connection. Most Windows system always come with Windows system. When you open it, this is how it's going to show. Then you can go to the more option. Then you have to put your host name, the host that you want to connect to, which is the IP address of that server. So you need to go to this server that we have here. Go to our Windows server that we created. The IP address of the server. To get the IP address, just open the server. Then go to the public IP address. You can't use private now because we want to connect over the public. Click on the public. Go to the remote. So the computer that you want to connect to, this is going to be, that is the IP that you're going to put here. Then the username of that computer, remember, we save it, we have it as administrator, we put it down. Then we also need this password because it's going to ask for the password later. But here, I'm just going to say connect. When you say connect, it will want to connect. So what it's trying to do now is trying to talk to that server. Hey, do you have port 3389 opened? If it does not see that port open, it's going to cancel this. You say you can't connect. So now we need to go to that server and make sure that we open that port. so that when it's making that connection, it can see that that port is opened. Then once you see that it is open, you can now say, okay, you can now come in. Then it is at that point, it will ask for our password. So I need to go back to the security group that we are modifying the other time. Then just click on it, click on the security group here. Then go to the inbound and edit inbound, then add another port to it. I'm just going to say add rows. Then I'm going to look for RDP here. Here, RDP. And you can see immediately I select the RDP, say, okay, this is port 3389. Then I'm going to say I want it from everywhere. Then when I save this, that is all I need to do. What I just did now is now mean that I have two doors opened. If you are coming in through SSH, you are welcome. You will be able to come in. If you are coming in through RDP, you are welcome. Every other means of communication, it will block them because they are not allowed. The only one that is allowed is this and this.